back before World War II, back before we organized firefighters on a military basis, back before we had 20-person crews, back before we had Army surplus folks, and back before we had a depression and a war and a million young men that were unemployed that we put into work on different projects, including firefighting, we had about 40 million acres a year of fire in this country. There's the other point of evidence that my numbers aren't crazy, they're just inconvenient, right? The ecosystems in this country, yeah, have traditionally burned. And then I dug and found some other stuff, and yeah, here it is again. What you're seeing here are the 30s and 40s. Hey, there's those numbers, 30, 40 million acres a summer burning in the United States. This tail here, that's lack of data. This is when we started keeping track. They hang on like that. And so there's a bunch of scientists looking at this now, but the short message that I've repeated now way too many times is, yeah, we are not having the amount of fire our forests need to be maintained as ecosystems going through their functions. 30, 40 million acres a year, though. These are incomprehensible numbers. Well, let's go back and talk about sort of the so what-y of all this. These numbers, the acres and the dollars being spent, we've switched from talking about millions to talking about billions of dollars. Now we have billion-dollar fires. I remember the first billion-dollar fire was in Los Alamos in '93 or something like that. Now it's like, they're all $1 billion. That's just burning up 1,000 houses worth $1 million, right? You know, easy. So we've got this change in this system. Now, a while back, Chief of the Forest Service came and testified. And here's another part. This is third prong of evidence. The same thing I'm saying. And he went in front of Congress and he said, wow, we've done an inventory. And there are 400 million acres in the United States that are in need of treatment. And what he means by that is these are places that have missed their fire return interval. That's what the Forest Service means when they say they need treatment. That means these are places that should have had fires. In fact, their official designation is a place that's missed 2 fire cycles. So if it's an area that traditionally has had fire historically every 20 years, they haven't had a fire in 40 years. So these are areas that are now primed to have fires that will shift them yet again. They'll have fires that are not like the historical fires. Their ecosystems are changing. That's about the size of Alaska. Right? So this is the scale of the problem. If you take all of this wooey stuff, places people live, that's about half that size. Once again, a mere Texas-size area is where people have shoved themselves in their houses into the woods and have shopping centers and McDonald's on roads next to forests that are going to burn and come into their houses and their McDonald's. So these are, once again, as a geographer, I struggle a lot with getting people's heads around a place like that. Anyone drive across Texas? How long it take? Days, right? It's not a thing. You do. It's like, hey, I got nothing to do this week. I'll drive across Texas. Now, picture an area that big that needs to have something done. And the traditional solution is, hey, chainsaws. We'll get in there, we'll thin it, we'll take the fuels out. Like, no, you and a million of your friends working all day forever might get on top of that. And once again, who are we going to hire, right? There's a whole set of politically fraught questions. Where are we going to get a million people with chainsaws to do work that's miserable, hot, and stinky, right? So part of it is we have these sort of messed up images. This is how this can work in places. You get in and you thin, but you can't just log. When you log, you take out the good parts and leave all the branches, and that stuff burns real good. You're only taking the fireproof part. If you'll go look at a forest fire, the trees are still standing there. What's burned off are the needles, maybe some of the little branches. So it's all kind of backwards. And you log and take out the big logs, you put the branches back. What you've done is made firewood with kindling. So you've got to get in there and thin, make piles, burn them, get them out of there, turn them into product, mulch them up, turn them into jet fuel and stuff like that. Makes great sense in Georgia, right? They're doing this. You know how they log here? They have big semi-trucks, and they put an attachment on the back with a chainsaw thing and a chipper in their arm, and they just back up. Beep, 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 and they just load these trees in as chips into the trucks and drive away. It doesn't work out here, right? You know, you drive up to Mount Baker and just sort of picture getting up there and getting some trees out of that. It's not a pretty project. So to get thinning, to get fuels out of these forests, there's only one way we're going to do it at this stage, and that's with fire. And so one of the things I'm here to tell you is we're not going to cut our way out of this. We are going to have to burn our way out of this. This is the only tool available. if we want to actually grapple with a couple 100 million acres that have a problem. And remember, what was the problem? There wasn't fire. Interestingly enough, I have a solution. Fire, right? A million political problems with this, but this is what it's going to take. Now, currently the Forest Service estimates that it's doing about 2 million acres a year. So if you had 200 years, and you froze where we are in time now, remember we're falling behind 20 or 30 million. So that number is getting bigger, way faster than we're treating it. And this treatment, by the way, only about a quarter of that, even less, is mechanical thinning. They're actually counting fires, not even just prescribed fires, but fires where, hey, that's a fire we can live with. I hope it doesn't burn to the town. Well, look, we'll count that as treatment. So it's not, this is not people with chainsaws. So once again, there are places where we can get in, do this thinning, do this clearing, do this kind of good work. But my take-home story, yes, without the gnomes, we're not going to cut our way out of this project. And we can't afford to keep doing what we're doing. Once again, billions of dollars, risking people's lives, and there's a lot of fun debate about whether we spend our money wisely, right? 20-person crew on the ground might be able to do a lot more than this thing, but if you're in charge of a fire and there's a town nearby and you have an option to call in this thing, you call it in. Because if the fire goes and burns up someone's house, you want to be able to say, we threw everything we had at it, you know? I don't care if that house is worth $100,000 and these things cost me $6 million a day, we threw everything we had at it. But there's a lot of debate in the fire business about what's efficient, what's effective, who's got which contracts, and this kind of approach has some serious ecological consequences. We're not supposed to put retardant in creeks. It happens. I've seen, even in Yellowstone, I remember seeing hundreds of dead trout. We walked upstream, like, what the hell? And it was just a little tiny bit of retardant that gotten into a creek. So these aren't ecologically neutral ways of handling fire either. So once again, what I'm saying is, we're way behind. We've got to throw in millions of acres of fire, and we're going to have to do it at a scale and a pace that's not really in our history. And I don't, like I said, I don't know if it's going to happen. I'm honestly going to say that it's the thing that can get us out of some of these problems, and it's the kinds of things we're up against. Now, once again, this brings up a bunch of stuff. I'll be okay if you didn't put the damn city of Anacortes in the pretty forest. It'd be okay if Brad Pitt didn't need 4 houses in this thing. People are building stuff in places where the houses can burn down, and when you live in these places, it's nice to have a wooden house and wooden shingles and the branches rubbing against your shingles at night sounds nice in the wind, and the wooden deck with the grass and the wood pile on it, that's neat stuff. So let me just go through another quick little bit of numbers. Right, remember big Texas, bigger Alaska, we're only doing a tiny bit of it, 2 million acres a year. Here's a fire, getting to be a good long time ago in San Diego. Forest fire, burning up hundreds of homes. Notice this light's kind of problematic, actually, but there's still forest. It's the houses that have burned up. Yeah, what happens when a forest fire hits a community is not 100-foot walls of flame coming through and taking out all the houses. What happens is the forest fire gets to where our houses are, and there's no forest, so it's like, well, I'm done being a forest fire, but here you can have this little ember on your roof. And it rolls down and gets in your rain gutter where you haven't cleaned out the pine needles, and the pine needles start burning, and then you have a wooden soffit over your rain gutter, and the little 6-inch flame goes over and catches that part on fire, and now your house is on fire. But because there's a forest fire, you ran away. You're not there with the hose to put it out. And now there's 4 houses doing it. Hey guys, how many houses can you handle at once before you run out of water around here?
If the roof's on fire, we'll go away.
Yeah. You go next door, right?
Yeah, go find the one that...
Fight the one next door. But seriously, how many engaged houses?
Half.
Yeah.
Half a house.
So once one house is burning, say these dudes are on it, they're like, hey, we got this house. Oh shit. I see another one. Well, we got this one. And that's how much water there is. And this is what happens. This probably took 11 hours. This house caught. Fighting. Oh, this one caught. And little is over this one. We're at 3. Now, great big San Diego Fire Department's out of their league. Right? And this is what I'm saying. Look at this. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about in big fires in California now. This isn't a forest fire raging through forests, taking down houses. And once again, green hedges, green grass, green trees. This is what it looks like when towns burn up a lot. Not always, there's exceptions. But once again, here we are, right here in Reading. Yeah, it burned through here, got in the grass, we got up in there. So this is the kind of stuff that's going on. Once again, here's Miley Cyrus's house, right? There's still forest on all the sides. This wasn't 100-foot flames coming through the trees. These are house fires. We don't have a name for what happened in Paradise yet. 100 years ago, we sure did. You know, Chicago knew what a city fire looked like. San Francisco sure did right after the earthquake. There was this thing that America knew about really well, that whole towns burn up. And we rediscovered it. And we're talking about it like it's forest fires, and it's not. It's an urban phenomenon. And there's lots of knowledge out there about what it takes to stop your house from being involved. There's a FireWise program that is now national and all over the place that should get you the information. And it's not like you have to clear cut your whole place, but sort of the basic guidelines are, there's things you can do at your house. Get the stuff out of the rain gutters, get the wood pile off the wooden deck, make sure the grass is cut, make sure the rim of your house is made of somewhat fireproof materials and there aren't dry grasses. Thin enough that people can move around and help. Make sure these guys have a place to work, a place to put their truck. Make sure out here they can still drag a hose and move things around. And there's sort of this spherical distance at which you have to do stuff. One of the crazy things they figured out a while ago, they did an experiment up in Alaska. They built some houses next to some forests and they burned them up. And they had 200-foot flames, which is kind of like saying a mile-tall tsunami in fire language, 200-foot flame. That's and houses that were 50 feet away from that couldn't catch on fire. Big, tall flames don't catch that house on fire. The radiant heat from a fire that hot is not enough. At just very short distances, one hose line, that house is fine. But once again, that one little ember that's blown off can go 4 miles. And land on your shingle roof and blow down into your rain gutter, and boom, your house is on fire. I'll digress. A friend of mine in Boulder built this house. He was my friend. He knew what I would think of things. And so he made it out of concrete and metal. He lived right up in one of the Bernie canyons in Boulder. And he was getting done with it, and I, hey, Pat, walk me through the wooden soffits. Well, Medler, you know, it's real pretty here. But if this whole valley burns up, I want my insurance check and go live somewhere else till this all grows back. And so in the middle of this, there's all kinds of weird and perverse incentives that people have. And in fact, he built a lovely wooden deck out over this, and 3 years later, a fire came up, got in this deck, and burned his whole house down. And he moved across to the next valley over and built another house. And so, and it's really pretty there again. I think people underestimate how fascinating burn areas will be in 1, 2, 3 years. I mean, yes, it's different, but it's, once again, it's nature doing its nature thing. You go over to East Side and tour around, you see amazing stuff in fires that just happened 2 years ago. Let me just give you 2 quick little stories though. Getting to be a while ago, 6, 7 years ago, there were 2 fires burning simultaneously. Same instance, same weather, same system in Colorado, one in Boulder and one in Colorado Springs. So, 100 miles per hour. And it was the same deal. Big old fires up on the ridgetop, downslope winds, driving in very dry, windy conditions, driving flames down in, and yet billion-dollar fire. Burned down into the hills of Colorado Springs, burned up $1,000 million houses, quick, easy math. Yeah, kind of like what we saw at the Paradise. This whole neighborhood, right down, they held it at the freeway, very exciting stuff. Up the hill in Boulder, my friend lived in 4 Mile Canyon, and it was a previous fire, they had this thing going. It was the same time, the same weather system, same everything. This is what it looked like as it raged across the top of the hill. The city of Boulder was ready to be wiped out. I mean, people, I have many, many friends from there that were like, yep, we're running, you know, we're leaving the whole damn town. 80,000 of us are out of here, and it's all going to be burned down. And nothing happened. Boulder burned down. Check that. Remember the house with the little protectable space? Boulder had accidentally made a tremendously powerful fireproof zone around the town. In the late 60s, they voted themselves a 0.7% sales tax, used the money from that to buy up all the farmland around town just to keep it pretty, just so Denver wouldn't roll over the hill and they'd have to look at Denver. It was a very snooty thing. We like the farms, we'll just buy them, and we'll charge the people from Texas that are buying socks at the mall. It's win-win. And so, yeah, Boulder built this system right here. So when these fires came down out of basically Rocky Mountain National Park, the firefighters had, I mean, I'm looking at these guys, gold mine, right?
I know the fire chief that fought that fire at 4 miles.
Yeah, and this is what you want. You want
They were hoping it would get there.
base to work with, right? And so that became the difference. Colorado Springs, as a city, instead built a couple thousand houses in that exact same zone around their town. And yeah, I get the real estate and the various pressures. Boulder had done other interesting things. They had maintained fire in that zone, which in retrospect was amazing, given the very wealthy people that live right up next to these areas. And they would go around door to door. I was a ranger there for a while, and we'd go and show pictures and get people to buy in to the prescribed fires in the areas right around the houses. And this is the spooky part. These are their houses. And we had community buy-in for doing like 5 and 10 acre prescribed fires from their house out for exactly this reason. Now when the big thing comes, we might be able to stop it from getting to your house. And they would bring around these pictures. And this is what it looked like 100 years ago. This was to say, hey, look, we are trying to restore nature here. We're not out here trying to ruin your natural landscape. We're trying to figure out what was here previously. And we're trying to restore these meadows that were in the areas next to your homes. And they had one of my favorite programs. They had a Christmas tree thing, free Christmas trees. Come on out and cut. And so they would open up big chunks of this park system, and people from all over the state would show up. They would have 80,000 people come out with their own saws and cut down all the little trees, which is what you want to get rid of. This is the stuff that carries. The program was so successful that anybody that's really run a large bureaucracy knows what happens when something gets really successful. You cancel it because it's a mess. They didn't know they had 80,000 people coming to Boulder in cars. It was horrible. So they quit doing it. To me, it was one of the most successful projects I've ever seen. What I'm here to say is that we need to think of fire the way we've learned to think of flooding. When you build a city now, when you plan a community down on a riverfront or an oceanfront, we're kind of getting the idea. Don't put the fire department in the hospital and all that down in the area that's going to flood. Put the swing sets, right? River floods, swing sets get wet, you go back the next day, it's like, oh, the swing sets are wet. Right? I lived in New Jersey in a town where a hurricane hit, and we had all of the city infrastructure down along the water because that was the cheap land and it all washed away. Cities are learning to build resilient infrastructures for flooding. My main argument is that's how we have to think about fire and the wildland-urban interface. So, quick other math project I did. I took everything that has a name in the western United States. And this is the Dennings and the Kendalls and little places. And just a name, just a place that a post office would know the name of. So there's human habitation. And I put a 1/4 mile buffer around all of them. And I didn't worry about whether that buffer was on a lake. I didn't worry about if there was forests or anything. I just did everything. I just said, okay, whole damn thing. And let's go to the numbers. We got 400, we got Alaska of problem, Texas of people living there. There's only 11.7 million acres in these buffers. Remember that number I did before? The Forest Service is actually doing something to 2 million acres a year. My argument is this is where we can do something. And once again, if you have huge 100 million acre areas where nature isn't getting to do its nature thing and the only solution is really fire, that's politically impossible as long as the communities nearby are like, well, you ain't setting fire there because that goes right to my house. But once communities feel like these buffers are reasonably resilient, it opens up a whole lot of policy alternatives. And so a lot of towns, the Missoulas, the Boulders, the Flagstaffs, are starting to think this way about, well, all right, worst case scenario, we have these big fires, we have these homes, how do we handle the interface? And this is sort of the conversation I'm proposing for you guys, is, okay, worst case scenario, it's blown over the top, it's up there by the towers on Mount Airy, it's coming down these cliffs. What do we, right then, you'll wish something was different. How big is that difference and where in the communities? And I don't have those answers. I'm here to tell you, it'd be a great thing to talk about, right? And what's that going to look like? Now, those are the places around the homes, around the communities, as you get these interfaces, that's where the mechanical work makes sense. That's where the chainsaws work. That's where hiring the 19-year-olds that are unemployed to get out there, that's where raking works. Right? But it's this tiny little zone. It's just this little space, 100, 200 yard wide space that you want to have protecting your communities or your homes. And once again, you may be thinking at it as a house scale, someone else may be thinking of a neighborhood, someone may be thinking of a whole community. It has all kinds of great side benefits. That's the only zone where it makes any financial sense to use those resources. If you're going to cut and trim, if you're going to rake, there actually is a market if you don't have to move it 60 miles. If you're out trying to do thinning in the middle of some national forest, 60 miles from the nearest town, just the cost of raking and shipping and moving it's just no way. The biofuels make sense. But in and around the community, there's a lot of places now in Idaho where they're actually setting up these little smaller scale projects to take advantage of things like biofuel to make lignin stuff and aviation fuel and all these kinds of neat products. So the other neat thing about switching this approach is we need to switch to a 21st century career, right? We've been doing this thing with this war metaphor. We need to switch to a management metaphor. We need to start thinking about how our forests are. They have fire. Oh, what does that mean? What is that going to mean for our fire crews? What's it going to mean? And one of the things I like to talk about, this town is not the main one I'm thinking. I've given this talk on the east side a fair bit, where one of the big crises is that the young people leave. They get to be about 18, 19, it's like, yeah, Dad, I'd love to stay, but what do you think I'm going to do around here? And so it's not that much work, but it needs people, and it needs young people. It needs strong people with backs that don't mind being bending over. And what I'm proposing is local communities can establish groups that have worked during the year to actually create these kinds of barriers and manage it. And when a fire comes, these people know every little nick of it. They know which little drainage will burn in. They know which little spot's got a propane tank. They know the area. They're not a fire crew brought in from Alabama who don't know what the hell to do. So this is a really win-win thing to create a community mitigation project with people that have this kind of expertise. And it also creates an opportunity for professionals who now are working in groups like 2 or 3 on the 40,000 acre fires. Instead of sending in everything we've got, if the communities feel safe, we can have very low cost fire management in big swaths of backcountry and in wilderness and Forest Service lands that we really should have no business fighting. We're just making it worse. Like I said, we don't stop forest fires, we reschedule them. That's all we can do. Right? There's no, short of concrete, that's all we're doing is saying, we'd rather have this later, and we're willing to have it be a lot worse then. That's what you're doing. So, yes, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm kind of been a downer. But I really do want to be sort of leaving it with yes, it's part of nature, and I think particularly communities like Anacortes, Bellingham, and to a certain degree the Demings and Cedar Woolley's are in this spot where they have some real options. Frankly, in the state of Washington, the one that freaks me out is Issaquah. Driving up over 90 and looking on the left, and all those new developments where the houses are just the right distance apart to catch each other on fire, but they also have trees right in between, and it's really steep, and there's probably no water. And here's the deal. This is probably some take-home information. In Oregon, growing up as a firefighter, we had 70 and 80 and 90-day droughts. That's why we had forest fires every couple of years in those forests. Around here, what was it, a couple years ago, 50-something, 58? Were you guys nervous?
Just a bit.
I was getting a little nervous. And I was out twisting twigs. You go up to different sort of tree branches, get the little guys, you should be able to wrap them around your finger. And after 50 days drought and the temperatures we have here, they twist just fine. And about 60 days drought, they start breaking. 70 days, they just snap. And that's the figure out your escape routes moment. If you go out and twist twigs and they're snapping on your fingers, or you're starting to see 70-day droughts in late August, know which 2 ways you can drive away from your house. Know what the combination is on the safe with the photos and that kind of stuff. And we don't think that way in this part of the country. I keep firewood on my wooden deck. I'm good. Come July, I take it back off. I'm like, all right, I'm going to put the firewood over here for the next 2 months. And it's a different head space mostly. But it's just nature unfolding. It's nothing unnatural. It's nothing to be genuinely afraid of. It's part of the system. And so that's what I want to leave you with, is this idea that as a community working on a forest, it's not the enemy. It's not a problem. It's just another one of the facets, just like water, just like air. It's just how these forests work. But you got to get your head around these sort of bigger picture problems. I think I'll cut it off there. See if I've scared you all, or take some questions.
So you showed the picture of the mountains near Ellensburg, which all completely covered with trees. So what's the solution there? Just let it burn?
Well, once again, I hesitate to prescribe everybody's solution, but the broad scale solution is that many of these forests, not all of them, are in a situation where they've had enough suppression to sort of change the fire regime. So yes, broadly speaking, not let it burn, but yes, we're going to have more fire in more places. That, specifically outside of Ellensburg, yeah, that's a fairly common quick fire return interval out there in the historically, like, I don't know, 50-ish years, 40 years. And so we've had a lot of fuel buildup. If you come over here on the west side, like I said, the fire return intervals are tended to be 500 years, 50 years of fire suppression here. A lot of our forests in western Washington aren't on a whack yet. But for places like Ellensburg, I am saying we need tens of thousands or millions of more acres of burning out in that neck of the woods. But I can't, in all consciousness, propose that as a good idea until the communities, the homeowners, and the different scales are okay with that. And that's my main urging. We've got to be adaptable. We've got to learn to live with the fire and not simply say, whoa, we can't have fire. We've got to stop all of them forever. Because like I said, we're just rescheduling and getting the firewood pile bigger. And so, yes, it's going to have to burn. Maybe in 300 years, maybe in 30, maybe next year. It's not a, hey guys, we got to burn the whole country tomorrow, everybody get torches thing. It's that we have to reestablish natural fire regimes at a really broad scale. Yeah.
So for the Anacortes area, is it important to remove the lighter fuels or not? I kind of heard different things in different parts of the
Well, I'm being evasive. And literally, as a geographer, most questions I answer the same way. Well, it's spatially variable and complicated. And so, there's a difference on north sides and south sides of hills around here, for example. And different, the forests that grow on the shady sides and the sunny sides. Go look on that south side of Mount Airy. It's a very different ecosystem than on the other side. The short answer is, we've got ladder fuels problems out here, and prescribed fire is a possible solution to that. But like I said, we're at a 3,000 acre forest unit nestled up against homes. These are the kinds of places where my hardcore earth first hippie hat comes off, and I'm like, that'd be a great spot for a chainsaw and some thinning and some teenagers with grapes. But you've got to, these guys are who I'd like to talk to. We should be asking, what is it we can do? And then have them have conversations with the folks that are monitoring the ecosystem dynamics. Like, what would be a reasonable approach? Going back to the other gentleman's question, when you're talking 100 million acres, that's going to be fire. That's going to be big, broad, expanses of fire. But around homes and communities, there's a lot of other options that make sense. I'm being evasive. I don't know. I'm not from here. Can somebody tell me? How are the ladder fields up here?
I'm Mike Boyce, I'm a fire chief for Mount Airy Fire Department, south end of the island. We were at Cranberry for 3 days fighting that fire. We had the Thomas Fire this summer. I've been fired on the fire department out here 30 years. We're getting fired. He's right. I heard you about right after this quality click.
Yeah, I remember.
You print this presentation. Scared the crap out of me. That's why the Mount Airy Fire Department, everybody out there is red carded. Everybody out there is certified to fight wildland fire. For one person, safety. All about safety. But ladder fuels, fire-wise, is what we need on this island.
Yes.
It is here. The fire is here. They say, whatever you believe in the science, stuff is changing. We are getting fires. And they're going to get bigger. And the fire cycle is longer here. Knock on wood. One of our firefighters that used to work for me here was at Twist River. He was 500 feet up the road from where the 3 guys died. He went through his shelter for 45 minutes after he hid in the garage for 20 minutes. He got caught because the fire is changing.
Yeah, the story he's telling there was fire behavior there that none of the local and regional folks had experienced before.
Donnie came out to California and Colorado and he got caught.
Yeah, and these are stories you hear every summer. You have people that have 40 years experience getting crews caught, and they just keep saying the same thing. I've been doing this 40 years. I have never seen anything like that. What happened there? Which is usually, for example, fires running downhill. It's the classic.
The cranberry fire out here.
Yeah.
The fires don't burn on the west side. I've heard that for years. That's gone now. Fires burn on the west side. Fire doesn't burn at night, does it, Wayne? On the west side. Never. No. Cranberry started at 8 o'clock at night. It was browning. It was in the treetops. It was running.
Well, that's what we had in the Chuckanuts. We had one
The
burning at
Chuckanuts.
night down.
Wayne Walsh's one. Then there was no wind. That was the scary part. It was factoring down hill. It had no wind affecting it. Wayne Walsh is one of my firefighters, contract firefighter, 20 years in the wildland business.
It's good to be scared. Even for me, I'm getting ready to retire, 46 years old, and the fires I've seen, I was down in Oregon this year, I went to Santa Rosa. The size of this island burned on the Santa Rosa
In hours.
Yeah, in an afternoon.
one afternoon. It went from basically La Vega, California, through Napa to Santa Rosa, from a power line.
But fire-wise, please, fire-wise. None of you fire.com.
And we'll come out and take a look if you want us to.
We've got a pretty dense second growth forest in this island in most places, and a lot of alder and maple within its conifers and stuff. Can you do a prescribed fire in this kind of forest?
Short answer is yes. You always can. And once again, it's complicated. On the east side, for example, we've been using prescribed fire seasonally for 30 years out here, under the idea that, well, what we need to do is go in when it's fall. Let me get my seasons right. Yeah, go in when it's wet and try to burn and get the understory. And what we had learned there was that there was still a huge problem. That the fires that had burned traditionally in the summer were burning when the soils were dry. And so you could put a really hot fire on the ground, and the roots 3 inches down were insulated and fine. But we were doing these prescribed fires, just 2 to 3 foot flame lengths in the fall when it's rainy and wet, and the soils were wet, and it was heating the soils. You know, if you ever grab a hot pot with a wet pot holder versus a dry one, you know what I'm talking about. It was like boom, steam, flash burn. And so yes, there was ecological knowledge necessary for them to figure out that what seemed like a great idea turned out to have problems. Those are the kinds of things where you need to get some expertise and to understand your system, and you need people that are professionals that are working year after year, learning how your system works, and starting small and figuring out what the pitfalls are. And this is why I do say, for a scale like what we have around here, yes, mechanical thinning and working, starting small, 1 acre prescribed fires by people that you know are going to be the ones that are going to try to do the 10-acre ones in 2 more years. Working with the Firewise communities to make sure that everybody that's down in feels pretty good about this whole thing. These are the steps that it's going to take. But yes, the short answer is yes. Prescribed fire would be a great solution. People get kind of bent out of shape about human ignition versus lightning and what's natural and unnatural. I will say, that ship sailed. You know, you're in it. You're dealing with this, whether you're choosing to manage it or not. We can't rely on just natural ignitions in a system where we've mucked it up so very much and in the spatial scale. Once again, a lightning strike that would have hit down here a couple hundred years ago would have had continuous fuel and burned up on the mountain. So now, no, that's not going to happen. So the fires aren't getting there. The natural ignitions don't have a fire shed to bring them to what's now the mountain reserve areas, right? Because literally the fire shed contributes fire uphill generally, has been greatly reduced by houses and roads and stuff. So yeah, we've mucked that up enough that humans probably need to step in and try to reestablish some of that natural fire regime for dozens of reasons, mushrooms, ferns, and natural systems. And yes, it's a second growth forest that's already very complicated. This is this longer vision, like what do we want it to look like for generations? How do we want this natural system to unfold? And I'm here to tell you, fire is a part of it. And you can either be in front of it or be caught off guard by it. Those are pretty much the 2 choices I'm offering. Yeah.
There's a consequential issue, which is air quality, that has really come to the fore in the last couple of summers when we had weeks of really bad air quality. You know, the sun was red, you can look straight at it. Is that motivating the air quality quality and ecology agencies? Are people seeing that as another incentive?
No, it's actually working the other way. I'm sorry to report. The state of California, and once again, I'll sort of make a parable and cartoon of a complicated situation. But my friends that have worked in fire in California for years have given up on prescribed fire in a great many areas because of the smoke problem. And so if you're a fire management officer and you work for some Tahoe district and you try to put a 50 or a 500 acre prescribed fire on the ground and it blows into someone's neighborhood, you get nothing but grief and you might lose your job. Whereas you're like, okay, people, we tried. And then later, a fire comes and burns through the air and creates a lot more smoke and creates a lot more problems. You run in with your chainsaws and you get free drinks for a week from all the neighbors who think you're the best thing ever. It's like, ooh, you're heroes. And so what do you think they're going to do? Right? And so I will say, especially in California, the air quality thing is the giant elephant in the management room. The experiences you've had here the last couple of summers have had very little to do with fires near here in this group. We've had some bad days from Mongolian fires. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos, but this last summer we had fires both in California and Canada. Went out, got out, most of us came in. So it's a continental set of problems. And I'm not here to diminish the problems of smoke. Believe me, I have breathed more than my share, and it takes a toll on me. Once again, not a set of easy answers. But this is where the community involvement, this is where the city of Boulder managed to get people to buy in. Yeah.
There's another component to this, the advice of when you find yourself in a hole, quit digging. Why are we building houses in the interface?
I give you a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we figured out that houses in the floodplain are stupid. Houses on unstable hillsides are stupid. What's smart about building in the interface?
Well, and once again, I think there's some scale things. People in Paradise lost homes with homes going in 2 miles in each direction. They didn't feel like they were at what you might normally think of as the interface between wildlands and urban. So that when we talk about wildland-urban interface fires, we can be talking about 20,000 person communities. And so yes, it isn't just the single houses out in the woods. It's San Diego, the whole damn thing, you know. So it's right.
So in Paradise, was the fire leaping from the trees to the houses, or was it the picture you showed where the trees were intact and the houses?
Well, I could actually get into whole sets of conspiracy theories on the internet on this one with you. Yeah, all the above is the short answer. Broadly speaking, it was an urban phenomenon. It wasn't big waves of flames coming through, even though there are lots of trees there. Once again, in the photos you look at through, there are still big green needly trees between row after row after house. The fire was largely carried from home to home. The conspiracy theory elements that I hesitate to get into involve the electrical grid. That Paradise had switched to a different kind of metering where you can check your meter driving by, and those actually didn't contain a circuit breaker for the meter itself. The houses had circuit breakers, and one of the hypotheses is that something like a 20 gazillion volt shock came through the whole system, and the meters themselves all burst into flames. And there are dozens of houses in Paradise where the only thing that's burned is the wall around the electric meter. The houses are fine. So I mean, there's other things that happen when a fire moves through a community like this. Besides just the fires moving, there's the electrical grid, and then the big killers. These guys can't do a damn thing at that size. So it's just going to burn. You know, once 5 houses are burning, the next houses are going to burn. Then the next houses are going to burn. And there's nothing anyone can do about it when you've got 800 of them are already involved. So yeah, it was I will say out loud, it was an urban phenomenon. It wasn't a forest fire.
We've actually had an urban conflagration.
Yeah.
Came out of San Bernardino in 2004.
That's the words you're using? Urban conflagration?
It took 200 fire engines, pumpers, to stop that fire.
Yeah.
They lined up on city blocks and literally made a wall of water. But they were 18 blocks in the town.
Yeah.
They stopped. It was no longer, it was no longer forest fire.
Yeah, no, it's rolling. And that's the one that keeps me awake around here. Is, you know, where I live in Bellingham, rolling down out of the Chuckanuts, we have a whole community on Chuckanut, trying to drive around the hill. And there's no escape route. It's a single road that winds up for 1,000 vertical feet with hundreds of homes along it, with a train track and campground at the bottom with people with campfires. And in Arizona, and New Mexico, and California, there are laws that say you have to have 2 roads out of every neighborhood. We don't do those sorts of things around here. There's a lot of planning and zoning issues to think about that fall into all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, you know, and the sparks that you save, they don't just go from house to house, they will travel miles,
Many miles in some cases.
you know.
The Santa Rosa fire in particular, remember stories were coming out of there of 10-mile jumps. I don't know that. Those were the legends I heard the next day. And I've seen, let me see if I can say this without trying to exaggerate. I have seen 3-foot diameter logs lifted about 1,000 feet in the air by the kind of fire whirls that'll happen in a big forest fire. So I mean, the scale and mass of what gets thrown out in one of those plumes is pretty hard to picture. And it's not just embers. It's pieces the size of a bicycle are landing a mile away. So another question? I scared everybody?
Thank you very much. Give us plenty to think about. It's changed the metaphor, I hope. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please stay and help us eat what remains. Remember, look up the hikes and come with us on the website, and or follow us on Facebook. And I was going to say, the office hours, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 10 to 1. So hope to see you in the woods. Thanks a lot.